I have a huge goal to help 1,000 people make their first million in the next 10 years. And in order to do that, I wanted to see where we stand today. So I did a ChatGPT 5 deep research project to see where we stand and what our net worth is. Okay, so first of all, I'm showing you on the screen. If you're not watching, make sure you take a look. First of all, we want to understand what median versus average means. So when we talk about your net worth is how much do you own? What assets do you have? Subtracting what you owe. So your assets minus your liabilities is your net worth. And when we talk about, you probably have done this before, where I have done this before, where you type someone's name in, you say, what is their net worth? And Google comes back with some sort of number. Usually that number is not extremely accurate unless the person has said it outright. And it takes into so many variables into account, right? But the average is taking everybody in a certain demographic or the country or a state or whatever. It takes everybody's number and then it just divides it by the number of people. So let's say the total is, it's going to be a lot more than this, but let's say in a certain state the total is $1 billion and there are 1,000 people. It's going to divide a billion by 1,000, and that's going to be the average. But the problem with that is that if someone had in that 1,000 people has $900 million, then it's going to skew the average. It's going to make it seem like people have more on average than they really do, which is they do have that on average, but it's not the same as median. Median is the more accurate number for our purposes because it really does show, okay, what does that person, pound for pound have? So we're going to look at the median in all of our uh, findings. So, just in general, at age 35 in the United States, I did the US only, the median net worth for a household with a 35-year-old head of household is 136,000. That's net worth. That's not annual salary. That's net worth. How much are you worth financially? For age 55, it goes up to 365,000. And I did want to break it down by race and ethnicity because I do think it's important to understand that there is a big difference. There's also a big gender difference, but the racial, depending on who you are on this, you can look at this on the chart. A white median household that's 35 and it goes up to 54 is $185,000 net worth. If you're 55 plus, it goes up to 315,000 net worth. For a black median household, $40,000 100 for 35 and up and 53,000 for 800. So at 35 and up, it is around 4.5 times if you're it's 4.5 times less if you're black than a white family or household. And then the disparity gets even bigger at something like almost 6x by the time you're 55. So it actually gets worse over time. And I do think that's worth noting. Hispanic, 46K, 35, and 111,000 at 55. I personally don't know if this includes Asian in any group, and it probably doesn't if I had to guess. Single black men versus women, 55, 55 plus or 35 plus, is women 8,000 versus 26,000. And it's really interesting. So I checked this twice because I was like, what happens with black women at 55 plus? What happens where it actually flips, where black women make or have more of a net worth? It is still like paltry, Is that the word? Paltry? I think that's the word. It's still that, but it's different. It's men now, black men are like flipped. And then with white women, the disparity is not as noticeable, but there is a disparity. Obviously, like we talk about this all the time, there's a disparity in salaries and there's this disparity in what women in general are able to do out in the world because of our caretaking responsibilities that tend to outweigh. And listen to how carefully I'm choosing my words, right? They tend to outweigh. There's always an exception to every rule. And then I wanted to make sure that we were talking about that where you live in the US, because that can completely skew these numbers. And Hawaii has a very high median, but that doesn't mean that everybody in Hawaii is balling. We know that not to be true. But then in the Northeast and then in the West, so California, Oregon, that sort of thing, and then in New York and Massachusetts and Connecticut, those are the highest and the wealthiest regions for different reasons. So, in a world where we're talking about right now, slavery is a big topic of discussion because of some things that Julian Michael said, and that now the president has said about how the Smithsonian is kind of overdoing it when it tries to talk about slavery being such a bad thing, and that it's like saying that white people are just evil, and white people are not evil. The act of slavery that went on for hundreds of years, essentially, was evil. And there's no question about that. And it also, there are a couple of people I know who kind of talk about slavery, kind of well-known people who talk about slavery in the U.S. rather flippantly when they're talking about financial things. And I don't think that they're bad people. I don't think that at all. I think that they may be not as educated on the topic and sensitive to the topic as I would like them to be. Simple as that. But they talk about it so flippantly as if it's something like talking about, how we went from horses to cars or something. And it was an atrocity. And so I highly recommend, if you don't know much about slavery, which I knew a lot about slavery, but I still learn every single year more and more and more. So I'm not trying to act like I know so much and you don't. I'm trying to say like we should all open our minds to it. I would do some research. It's not easy stuff to read, but think about the people who had to endure it. Look at these photographs of people, humans being trafficked over in these ships, thousands at a time, stacked on top of each other in chains. I just had to do an MRI for an hour, and it was mentally, I had to really go places in my mind to keep myself okay in that, constrained place. And that was like the best doctors and the best care there is, basically. And this is weeks at sea, treated like animals, treated worse than like any domestic animal for sure, like treated horribly. That's just to get over here. And it happened over and over and over and over again. And then they get over here and their entire lives are just in servitude, in chains, beaten, and all for the purpose of making America, the United States of America, wealthier. And yes, many of those, slavery was not in every household. It was not every single white person, every single household, but it was prevalent. And so many of the people who live today, your ancestors, were slave owners, or you were people who were okay with slavery. Some of you, many of you. This is what I would suggest you do too. Not only look at those photographs, or those drawings and renderings, but look at an auction, like an auction copy. Look at auction copy of slaves being auctioned off, and imagine it is someone that you care about. Imagine it's you. Or imagine it's your grandmother. Just do that. And I think it honestly will just in a few moments will just change your perspective if you have any doubts about how important and atrocious slavery was. And then when I think about like the reason I'm talking about this is because I know that based on comments and like living in this world, in this body, I know that there will be some people, including Black people, by the way, because some of y'all get into my comments and act a fool, will say like, why is this video about this? Why are you talking about this? This is supposed to be financial. So da, 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 da. It's all related. You know, I started a venture fund more than 10 years ago called Backstage Capital, and it invests in the less than 10% of the population who doesn't, you know, who gets very little capital in venture investing and tech investing. And what you do when you're a venture capitalist, one of the things you do is you go out and you raise money from different institutions, right? You have these big funds, and then they invest in these companies, and then you, as a consumer, you have the company, like YouTube, like you know, Google was invested in at one point in life, and Amazon was invested in at one point in life, and Airbnb and Twitter and all of these companies, all of these AI companies that you're using right now, all of them have been invested in by venture capitalists, and they are venture capitalists are fueling, you know, innovation in the world, right? And in a lot of ways it's good, and in some ways it's not. But one of the things you do as a venture capitalist, and I know this, I have the authority to talk about this because I've invested in more than 200 companies in 10 years and built a venture fund from the ground up while I was homeless when I started. So before you comment, what are you talking about? That's why I have the authority to talk about this. I just don't act like I've done all this stuff, but I have. I have the receipts, and you know, Google me. But one of the things you do as a venture capitalist is you go out and you raise from institutions. You raise from pension funds. You raise from endowments. You raise from universities and individuals, of course, high net worth individuals, etc. Every once in a while, you'll raise from a celebrity, and that's what kind of gets the news. But honestly, it's mostly these insurance companies and these very buttoned up institutions that are hundreds of years old. And one of the reasons I started my venture fund originally was because what I noticed, even as an outsider, just looking in and having no real connections, was that people were getting venture funds themselves were getting money from institutions that themselves were only wealthy and possible in existence because of slavery being the foundation of the country, the original sin, as they're calling it, being the foundation of like that was who did the crop, who sowed the crops, who did the manual labor, who did the things that now made it possible for your grandfather in 1913 to, well, maybe I don't know what people's ages are, but you know what I'm saying. Your great grandfather in 1913 to go ahead and take out a $10,000 loan with his buddy and and start the car company that they started that now you live on. And when I say you, I'm now talking to people who actually have that history. There's most people in the country don't have that history. You have the history of I'm trying to make it work, right? But I noticed that they were getting these venture capitalists, VCs, were getting money from these institutions that were built on the backs of slavery, of slaves. And then when their offspring would come in to try to get capitalized and raise money, they couldn't even get in the room. And if most of the time, and if they could get in the room, they were torn down more times than not, especially the 12 and 10 years ago when I started. And I wanted to change that. And I just thought it was crazy. I'll put it another way. A Black woman who was 55, who worked at a school for 25 years, who paid into a pension every single year, that pensioner, that pension would be used to feed and fuel venture capital. That black woman's grandson at 27 or 22 or whatever could walk in to a venture capital fund that received money from that pension fund and be turned away more times than not given a chance. So I've seen it happen in person. I've seen it happen over and over again. So it's not like I'm like, oh, I'm so woke and I everything is put upon me and I'm complaining. No, I've actually just seen it happen, and I'm gonna always come back to logic and strategy. It's foolish. So I thought it was foolish then. I think it's foolish now, and I'm saying you're missing out on so much. And look what's happened in the last decade. We've had a lot to do with that. My fund has had a lot to do with inspiring other funds and other investors to like not be stupid. We've done that. We've also inspired the founders themselves to demand more and to go around that system in many instances because the system is broken and flawed in many ways, and it's not necessary for us. So I'm very much a person who has helped build the infrastructure of the new generation of this system of venture capital, but I definitely don't have any reverence towards it. I feel like it is a means to an end. It is a tool. It is one option in many options. Some people will need it and want it and be able to use it in a really constructive way. And others, most others, will, I believe, need to build their own tables and in a good way. So when we look at these numbers, not only for people who are doing like tech companies and startups, but when we look at these numbers for ourselves, and no matter what race you are, or what gender you are, what ethnicity you are, when you look at the numbers, how do those numbers stack up? Go back and pause on those numbers again. How do those numbers stack up for you? Where do you stand with those numbers? Now, your net worth is not who you are. It does not make your self-worth, right? It is one data point in the grand scheme of things. But I really like the idea, me at 44, almost 45, right in the middle of these two, 35 and 55. I really like the idea of just level setting and saying, where am I right now? If something happened that was really, something emergency related happened right now, would I be able to pull from this and pull from that? Or am I a negative? Again, it's your assets minus your liabilities. It's what you have, what you own, minus what you owe, your debt. And many of us, even with those numbers that we saw, those numbers aren't very high, you know, in the grand scheme of things. So I know I've painted such a stark picture, but I'm always looking for hope. I'm trading in hope. Hope is my currency. And so what I think of when we have the information, we have the data, is that there is hope and there is something we can do about it. Leave a comment so far if any of this is resonating with you. Let me know anything that's coming to mind for you, because this is a conversation. I always like to have conversation with you. And let me know where you think I've gone wrong. I'm going to put a link here in the description where I'm going to link to the sources of this information. So again, that one more layer of hopefully you'll stay out of my comments yelling at me. But I can take it. It's all good. But I will link that so you can look through it in more depth. And it's not just about race or gender. It's just in general, where do we all stand? Does that number, is that number okay with you? Like, is the number on that screen okay with you that I put up earlier? And are you someone who wants to make sure that you're there? Do you want to outdo that? It's really up to you. There's no right or wrong answer. It's just like, let's take a diagnostic of where we are right now. What can you do to raise that number for you to be above average? What can you do to be above the median? There are a few things. Dr. Pamela Jolly, who is a Black woman who is an expert in Black wealth, essentially. And again, why Black? Why this? Why woman? If I were talking about medical things and I said that this doctor was a doctor of was a podiatrist, or this doctor was there's obstetrician. Ooh, I can't think of the word. Whatever. I would call out what type of expertise they have. This is what I'm calling out. She says, and she said to me, Black people own, let me start over. Let me start over. Oh my gosh. Rich people, rich people own things and collaborate. Rich people, she didn't say what race, she didn't say anything. She just said, in general, rich people own things and collaborate. I never forgot those words. I think she said it to me potentially in 2018, probably in 2018. And I have never forgotten those words. And those words probably helped me make more than $1 million since then. I've made much more than a million since then. So it probably contributed to at least a million of it because it made so much sense to me. When it comes down to it, put it in the comments. Rich people own things and collaborate. So any words, any of those words or the full sentence, put it in the comments and I'll know that you saw this part. And tell me a little bit about what you think about that. Don't just put the words. Let me know. This is a conversation. I really want look at all of those comments. So I love hearing your take. Also, make sure you are subscribed to this channel. And if you're not subscribed, tell me why you're not subscribed. Ask yourself, why don't I just push the button? I just want to be subscribed. When you subscribe, it's so cool for the channel. It makes the videos go out to more people and it grows the channel and it's really awesome. And you don't miss a video. So what you can do is you can look at your consulting service, your agency, your course, your whatever your offer is, your physical product, your events. Look at it more like, what is this asset that I have? Not just how much money can I make from it today? How much money can I squeeze from this and make the 150 a day or $1,000 a day or whatever? How much can I do? Instead of looking at it only that way, look at it like, what do I own? What is proprietary about this? Is there a framework that I could trademark? Is there a book that I could write and copyright? Is there something that I can call this and ensure that it is, my intellectual property, my IP? Because when you think about owning things, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to own real estate. You can. Doesn't necessarily mean you have to own a tech startup company. You can. But you can own something by owning the intellectual property of it. And you can license that out over and over again where other people use it and use it for different reasons than you would use it. You could do what my former chief of staff, Melanie, does right now, and she has a certification program, so she could license all of that. I'm sure she has. Get it all, trademarked and everything, and then sell it to corporations. You can own a company by owning a part of that company. You can either be the founder of a startup, or you can work at a startup that's just getting started but has a lot of potential. And you can say, I'm not going to make as much of a salary up front, but I'm going to get as much equity here as I possibly can negotiate. And do that 2 or 3 times from your 20s to your 30s, or your 30s to your 40s, or keep the numbers going anytime, and stack equity. Most of that equity will be worthless because most companies fail. It's just statistically true. But something could potentially take off and you would own a piece of it. So you can have these different ways, these different levers you can pull. And it's not just always about that straightforward, okay, I'm going to put my offer up and then someone's going to buy it. And then I have that money for now. And then I'm going to have this percentage of profit and this percentage of expense. And then I'll do it again tomorrow and then again next week and again the next month. And I'll make XYZ. A lot of people who you know, who you consider to be rich, you probably know very little about what that really means to them. What you probably see is, oh, they made this much last year. That's probably even top line. That's probably not even considering what the profit margins are, but that's a whole other story. But what you usually don't hear about are the different investments they have going. Now, on the collaboration side, this one I think is even more powerful because it can lead to ownership, right? Both can lead to the other, certainly. And it does create a flywheel, in fact, which I love flywheels. But collaboration is something that you can do today. Collaboration is something that you can work on today. If you're in one of my memberships, your first 5K, Arlan's All Access, Inner Circle, you already are surrounded by people who are ambitious like you are, who are hardworking, who are strategically, working on things and want their lives to be even better than they are today. So you already have at least that pool of people to think about. And it may not be within that group, it may be outside of it, maybe someone you already know. But you might see someone who is doing something that you want to do. And I'm not talking about going to Oprah and asking if you can work for her. I'm saying look over, just like Issa Rae tells us, look over, right across the aisle, right across the next seat in the classroom. You're not always going to look at the guest speaker for collaboration because that's what most people do, right? If you go to an event, a lot of times people, and I know this because I speak at all these events, a lot of times people will just beeline it to me. Beeline to me. I got to tell you about my company. They're going to shoot my shot, but do that. And that's cool. That's cool. That dynamic makes sense. But if that's all they came equipped to do and prepared to do, that's really leaving something on the table. More than I can say, because I'm going to leave. And there's so much inbound that it's going to take a lot to stand out. So my impact on you has to mostly be from that stage. It has to be what I said to you and what I instilled in you, and hopefully what the hope that I gave you, more than anything. And every once in a blue moon, yeah, you'll shoot your shot and it'll turn into something. But you know what has a lot better odds every single time? Much, much higher odds is that you're in that room with all the people surrounding you in the audience and you find someone to collaborate with in that audience. So it's one person on stage versus 200 people in the seats or 2,000 people in the seats or more. If I'm going to an event, my goal is let me look around. Let me see who's here. Same thing can be if you are a speaker. Like I said, there are 10 to 20% of my audience who are balling out of control. If you are a speaker, you're someone who has a book, you're someone who's out there. Where do we get our best connections? In that green room, at those speaker events. So when we go, it's not just, okay, the host. We got to get in with the host. The host asked me to come here, maybe even paying me. This event is on and popping. Like this big company brought me in, so I'm going to only do a deal with this big company. Yeah, you can have a conversation with the big company. Do it all the time. But what about those people in the green room? Are you sitting with your back to them? Are you on the phone with a client? Are you on the phone anywhere else? Or have you turned around and said, there's 12 people in this room and each of them got themselves into this room. I wonder what kind of collaboration I could spark with one of them. That's where the deals happen. That's the moves that millionaires make. Those are the moves that millionaires make. It's not just this laser focus on the most successful in their opinion or seemingly in the room because you're just taking your odds down to so low. It's a layered approach, strategy, long game, all those things. And all of us, it's not just about being in rooms about speaking, because many of us won't be in those rooms, but it's about wherever you are right now. There's some opportunity that you probably need to turn your head and look for. Open your mind, open your heart, think a little bit more strategically, a little bit with more abundance, and think about where you are right now. And wherever you are right now is just one dot on this data chart. I want you to really understand that. Put data, I don't know why, but put the word data, DATA, in the comments if you're still with me. Wherever you are right now, when you looked at that chart and you looked at your net worth and you thought about it, and again, if you're in a different country, please, it's pretty easy to go to ChatGPT and do the research that I just did for free, in fact. Wherever the median net worth is for your age range and your gender, and including your race or ethnicity, if necessary. That's one data point to understand, just to know, oh, okay, that's interesting. See where you are compared to it. See if you want to be above average if you're not. And then see where the moon is to you. Like what is your limitation? What is your cap? Is there a limit to what you want? There could be. A lot of people that I respect have a limit. I have a limit. Like I don't want billions of dollars. I don't need that. I'm good. I can make it. And if I do, I'll spread it. But I don't want it for myself. I'd be like, eh. But a few million, at all times, that works just fine for me. So that's what I operate on. What's your limit? Do you want like $100,000 and not have to work for anybody else? I was in a meeting with my with a group of my members yesterday, and I said to them, somebody asked me about what kind of kickstarted my ambition as an entrepreneur, basically. And I said, anger. I'm sure they were looking for something very inspirational, and I think it ended up being so. But anger, did you guess that word? Anger. I was angry at my bank account balance. I was angry at my net worth. I was angry at my circumstances. I wasn't pitying myself. I mean, I have before multiple times, don't get me wrong, but I wasn't in that moment to be inspired, to be motivated. I was pure anger. So instead of being sad, instead of being downtrodden, instead of being the victim of something when it comes to this, and I do mean just this, get angry and do something about it. What are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? If anything I said, you're like, she got that statistic wrong, or she didn't know what median means, or whatever, get angry about it. Let it fuel you. Let it like turn something in you. Or she talks about slavery too much. Let that anger you too. Go for it. But let your circumstances today, if they're not what you want them to be, anger you instead of sadden you. And I think for many of us, that will kickstart something in us. I'm angry. I'm going to do something about it. I don't want to be in this pain. Let's go. Let's make it happen. And then get closer and closer to your goals. Make sure you are subscribed to this channel. It would mean the world to me to have you as a subscriber. I want to grow this channel to 1 million subscribers, and you are helping me do that. Send this out to anybody who might need it. If you're one of the 10% or so of people who watched this far, I appreciate you. You are my people. we're gonna keep going. We're gonna keep going. Make me let me know in those comments what you want to see, what you want to learn about, and what you want to hear about.